Are you ready for a magical adventure? Get cozy and snug as we embark on a whispered story together. It's time to let go of all your worries and embrace the wonder that awaits. Imagine you're floating on a cloud high above the world. Take a deep breath and feel the calmness wash over you. You're safe, you're loved, and it's time to relax. In this enchanted realm, anything is possible. You might meet a friendly dragon who loves to tell jokes, or a mischievous fairy who grants wishes. Let your imagination run wild. As the whispers weave their way into your ears, feel yourself getting more and more comfortable. Picture your favourite place in nature, a sunny meadow, a cosy treehouse, or a secret garden. That's your special place, just for you. Let the whispers gently carry you to a land where dreams come true and adventures await. As you listen, feel your eyelids getting softer and heavier. Allow the soothing words to wrap around you like a cozy blanket, guiding you towards a night filled with magical dreams. You're drifting off to sleep now, carried away by the whispers and the comforting rhythm of your breath. The dreams are just beginning, and you're the hero of your own story. So snuggle down, my little adventurer, and let the whispered story whisk you away to a world where imagination knows no bounds. Rest well, dream big, and wake up ready for tomorrow's magical journey. Good night, sweet dreamer. May your dreams be filled with joy and wonder. You are listening to A Very Giant Tale. Once upon a time, many years ago, when Roman gods were much posher, there lived a gladiator in an imperial walled city called Devon in the northwest of England. The lion-hearted man was a courageous soldier with the strength of an ox. He'd participated in many gladiatorial battles in the local amphitheatre, but his latest combat was to be his toughest. Manunitus Sourpuss was to fight one of the most feared foes the city had ever encountered. Lambert of Freckle was an enormous man, a giant by any other name. He had moved into the neighbourhood with a tribe of dangerous Welsh giants who had made their home on nearby land on the other side of the city walls. The plot stepped down towards a gushing river topped by the hounds of the big ones. Fancy columns supported the entrances of their massive sandstone caves, flaunting the magnitude and strength of these unwelcome immigrants. Freckle was the most humongous giant you could have ever met. He was by far the biggest of the new ogre community, with a gigantic daylight obstructing head and the angriest looking face you could ever think of. His hands were like inflated dinghies and his feet like vast boulders. Shocking to look at, this superhuman was obviously not one to cross, and he, above all others, spread fear and anxiety throughout the city. Each time he was seen, the city dwellers stood in like frightened rabbits caught in oil lamp lights. He lifted sandstone slabs the size of elephants, and thundered them down with those great hands till they were jammed securely into their final resting places. The Welsh giants had moved in. Night after night, and more nights after that, Sourpuss lounged in the Swiss Bridge Street bathhouse, enjoying the lavish Turkish-style facilities. It was normal for it to be dominated by the diva gladiators. The leisure complex provided the amenities for him to take his fitness training there, and it was usually when he was having his routine rubbed out. He was prone to bragging about his latest successes in battle to his elite fellow officers of the 20th Legion. They had discussed the invasion of the Welsh giants on many occasions, at great length, how those big bombs were taking diabolical liberties and that, but on this particular night they took a vote. It was time for action. Sourpuss had clocked up a long service with the Legion, with many victories. He had been awarded the most prestigious accolade of all, champion. His comrades decided he was the one to take the fight to the ogres, and what an honor that was. This was the death-defying challenge of all challenges. This was the most honorable fight of all fights, and he had his trusty crossbow. He could justifiably shoot the Welsh intruders with his crossbow if they stepped within the city walls after night fell, and before the sun had a chance to rise. Any other time, he could do nothing, because the law said so. Of course, giants are a law unto themselves, and they brazenly wandered in and out whenever they pleased, just like they owned the place. And who would argue with that? So for the next 6 months, Sourpuss was out in all weathers training. Hail, the size of lemons, clouted him like sour rocks. He braved the snow in winter and beat the heat in the scorching summer sun, impressing locals. He tossed huge boulders, breaking local records. His muscles grew bulkier by the day. He practiced several brutal strokes and dazzling movements with a wooden practice sword, thrusting, cutting, and slicing a dangling dummy, drilling awestruck people who watched on in excitement and amazement at his skills. Many hours of crossbow training made him near perfect. He ran like a deer for miles around the meadows, demonstrating a combination of skills needed to be the top-notch gladiator he was. The streets were jam-packed with people who had travelled miles to see the champion prepare. Soon, all and sundry were talking about the gladiator, the one who was going to rid them of those meddlesome giants. He received countless gifts and donations. He had more followers than Justinian, Papusius, the great emperor of entertainment. He also had scores of servants who ran errands everywhere he went. He was now a household name, a killer of all known predators of any size. Many kings had heard of Manunitus Sourpuss. Sourpuss, Sourpuss, Sourpuss. The chants filled the city as the fever for the giant games spread, whooping and whistling every time they saw him. Then the great evening arrived. The fearless warrior bound leather cloths around his arms and legs. He strapped a sword belt around his waist, in case things got really nasty. His shoulders were mounted with a metal guard, and iron quizzes protected his beefy thighs. His helmet, now glinting from many hours of polishing, masked his face. His crossbow had been greased, and his arrows sharpened. The champion was ready. He shouldered his way through a gully of spectators, all wanting to slap him on his back and wish him well, singing "Glory, glory, Manunitus." And when he finally reached the gates, he milked a final farewell cheer by raising a hand and jiggling it around, a bit like royalty. This was easier than the fights in the amphitheater. Then he finally slipped out through the city gates accompanied by his entourage. He took great positive strides towards the tree he'd chosen which would give him the advantage, not far from the giant settlement. He proceeded to climb it with the assistance of his servants, bundling and pushing as he went. The servants fled back into the city, leaving Sourpuss waiting alone like a solitary leaf wavering on a branch that looked like it was about to snap any minute. The watchers piled along the city walls with growing excitement, snacking on chickpeas and waiting for the first giant to be slain. In the mocking light of a fire from within the lambent of Frecklebum's abode, the large man himself appeared. He was shadowed by another of his breed, female, so they say. At that moment, silence fell as though each person had forgotten how to breathe. They strode with strides almost as wide as the River Dee and their faces black as thunder. A tense whisper spread across the onlookers as Sourpuss took aim. They took their first step through the gates of the city walls. At the same time, Sourpuss fired. "Ouch!" Frecklebum bellowed. There were cheers and applause from the walls. "What's the matter?" asked the hulking woman-like giant standing next to him. She went by the name of Kelly Smell You Feet. "I've been nipped by something, isn't it?" he said in giant Welsh. He clutched his shoulder like he'd been stung by a bee. Smell You Feet snorted a big giant grunt, expelling a chesty cough. It was a noise she always made when she was tickled pink. "It's one of them tiny Roman arrows, boyo," she boomed, and plopped it out to show him. Sourpuss fired another bolt from his crossbow, which wedged in the ogre's knee. The celebrations heightened as the giant hopped about in discomfort. "Whose dot is this arrow?" Frecklebum thundered, and pinched it out between two clumsy fingers. Through the leaves in a nearby tree, he caught sight of movement. Sourpuss crawling along the branch like a cat stuck in a tree. "Here, you!" Frecklebum bellowed. "What are you doing?" Chance that there's only one Sourpuss died down, and the crowd waited with bated breath. Sourpuss was stuck up the tree without a ladder, no servants, and then, snap! His life flashed before his eyes as he plummeted to the ground, bringing with him a collection of leaves, branches, and anything else that was living up there. The crowd's participation was of disappointment, needless to say. Bruised and confused, he let out a groan, picked up his crossbow, and painfully limped back through the city gates, safely away from any retaliation. Embarrassed and sporting a massive bruised ego, as well as a sore bum, he blamed his servants, of course, and was issued with new ones. On day 2, he was provided with a much bigger crossbow, with lengthier arrows, and set off on his second attempt to abolish the ogres from Diva. The crowds gathered once more to wish him well and watch the fun. Yet again, he left through a valley of well-wishers with chants of encouragement and cheers of expectations, but this time with an undercurrent of jeering. He shinned up the imposing walls and parked himself on top, overlooking the giant's enclosure. Guards pushed back the crowds, catapulting any troublemakers from the area. Servants fussed around him, buffing and polishing anything they possibly could. Sourpuss was ready. He slid a particularly long arrow from a quiver which had been made deeper. This gave the servants time to dive for cover. He placed it in his enormous crossbow, drew the string back with a bit of a struggle, and stood perfectly still. He must have waited for over an hour or so, standing there like that. His stamina was remarkable, although a number of watchers had gone home, and one or two had brought sleeping cloths, and were having a doze. He was, therefore, startled to feel the numbing grip on his shoulders that he did. How dare they interrupt him when he was on such a vital mission? Where were his servants? He lowered his weapon, twisting in a strop, to face, as large as life, Frecklebum. He'd sneaked in without being seen. Surely this was impossible. "How's it going, boyo?" the giant cheekily asked, as he snatched a bunch of arrows from the quiver and snapped them, one by one, right under his nose. He had a nerve. Sourpuss still had one arrow waiting in the wings of his trusty crossbow. There wasn't a moment to squander. He swung the crossbow round, his muscles quivered with the pressure, and without further thought, released it with an almighty twang. By a stroke of luck, it made a beeline for Frecklebum's nostril, halting with a stomach-churning crunch. "Ouch!" he bellowed, disturbing every single one of the poor snoozing souls on the walls. "That's just losh, isn't it? right up my nose," the big man groaned. He tried to tug the spear out, sending streams of tears down his cheeks. It clearly wasn't going to budge. The watchers fled in all directions, now fully awake, and Sourpuss made a hasty retreat, ascending the walls and leaving the giant to deal with his dilemma alone. He wasn't going to stick around. Back at the bands, Sourpuss took a right ribbing from his colleagues. "It's not real science, just aim and fire," said one. "I've seen children shoot straighter than that," said another cold-livered bully Spartacus while loafing in a steamy bath. "Are you actually trying to kill him, or are you just playing a game of tig with him? What are you going to do next? Read him a bedtime story?" Spartacus had pleased many on the sands at the amphitheatre, and he'd recently been presented with the honour of the yellow scarf, which he'd wrapped absurdly around his head. "Let me know when you are ready for me to take over." The offer would be unthinkable, not to mention outright ill-advised. That buffoon would never be as good as him. Never. He would show him come rain or shine. With donations drying up, people's patience running thin, and a lack of servants later, the gladiator was about to make his third attempt. It was a dark, overcast day when a bent old deer made him a special offer of a bottle of green mush for 2 chickens. Sourpuss could not see the reason for the sloppy sauce, and it smelt of nothing. He didn't dare taste it. It was just as well as the crooked woman told him if he tapped a decent dollop of the gooey substance on the end of his arrow. She swore the mixture would shrink any giant it hit, or his money back with a bark-off offer thrown in. What had he got to lose? He accepted the deal and had 2 chickens beheaded. Fingers crossed the mixture works. The thought of a refund repulsed him. Soon after, he dipped each arrow into the green sticky stuff before placing them in the quiver. As darkness fell, he marched with his head held high through booing crowds. This did not trouble him at all. The servant provided him with a shield as several scallywags pounded him with baked potatoes sold by a nearby street vendor. Business was booming. Hecklers lined the streets, 1 or 2, to be fair, were cheering, but the drop in popularity did not discourage him. After all, he was a professional. This time, he stopped short of the city's gates. He took his arrow smeared with the antidote and carefully positioned it in his crossbow. The walls filled with masses, more than it should hold. Crowds crammed together just behind the gladiator, all up for another laugh. In strolled Frecklebum. Everyone cheered. "Oh, you again?" The giant frowned, still pinching his nose from the last attempt. "You may as well take another shot, boyo." Sourpuss did not respond immediately. It must have been 10, 20, 30 seconds or more before each and every one of the dealer dwellers shouted, "Shoot him," and sang, "Why are we waiting?" This was his moment, the one he'd been waiting for. He could really make a name for himself. The great emperor of champions. His finger twitched. This was too easy. Perhaps he shouldn't take advantage. Whoops. His finger jerked again, slipping away from the string in error and applying the infected arrow directly into the monster's chest. Volcanic eruptions of cheers radiated across the city. "He's done it," they roared. Unaffected, the giant merely whipped the tiny arrow from his chest and threw to the ground like a piece of lint. He was not usually lost for words, but on this occasion he felt a bit lightheaded. Then he felt his skin tightening, his muscles contracting, until unaccountably, unbelievably he was shrinking. And soon he was face to face with the gladiator. It did the potion seller's street credibility a world of good. Lucky for him, what gloves he did have shrank with him, or it could have been enormously embarrassing. Once I saw this happen to a pig. I was cooking it at the time. Frecklebum's shrunken vocal cords sounded like a 3-year-old on helium. The city dwellers were gobsmacked, and Sourpuss was dumbstruck. He hadn't really expected it to work. You could argue a pig wasn't a threat to us, but we needed to eat it. Do you need to eat me? Sourpuss shook his head. Eating was the last thing on his mind. He was still trying to get his head around the shrinking giant thing. I like your battle gear, it's lush, went on Frecklebottom. I had a helmet like that once, much bigger mind. You could scoop out an entire palm with it. He was full of nonsense and daftness as he rambled on. Sourpuss was suddenly hit by a tremendous realization. By Jupiter, he's no different to us. Not really, it's all just a matter of proportion. A frenzied discussion broke out along the walls, and it wasn't long before the vast majority of the crowd declared themselves in agreement with Sourpuss, earning him his new name, the Great Emperor of Mistakes. Cheering broke out as Sourpuss offered Frecklebottom the hand of friendship. The crowd then fell over itself to come forward and do the same. As the remedy wore off Frecklebottom, he returned to his full tallness again, alarming crowds who scattered like frightened chickens, but not Sourpuss. He realized Frecklebottom was Frecklebottom no matter what his size. It wasn't long before they heard the large rumble of gigantic feet as they lumbered to the scene. Abergelly Smelly You Feet, Breckenhildebeest, Rossif Jones, and many more ogres, all full of nonsense and daftness, and not as angry as they looked. Almost immediately the gladiators, giants, city dwellers rich and poor were brought together, realizing they were all just the same, and expressed joy in their newfound friendship by marching through the city. The baked potato vendor pushed the boat out by providing giant-sized spots, and the little old potion seller made a killing on her bark-off deal, as all the giants wanted to have a go at being little for a while. It was from then on the people of Diva forgot about the silly by law, and allowed the Welsh, big or small, within the city walls, no matter what time of day. To this day, a Roman garden displays the once classical columns, which might well have been built by giants. From time to time, giants can be seen parading through the city, and often an on-guard Roman warrior statue, who looks just like Manunitus Sourpuss, can be seen standing perfectly still outside the former bathhouse in Bridge Street, where they still sell baked potatoes. Rumour has it that on rare occasions you can see his eyes shift as he watches for giants. The end. Good night and sleep well.